Hey everyone, today we're going to use ChatGPT to create a custom learning interaction. I've been playing around with this a lot. I've built a lot of custom interactions myself. I'm talking about outside of Storyline or Captivate using custom code, and I wanted to see how ChatGPT could help me create this type of stuff without having me code the entire thing. There are still a couple things that you need to keep in mind or be familiar with on the code side of things to really get the ideal situation or the ideal interaction, but I've been blown away as far as what it can do, so we're going to explore that. My name is Jeff Batt with Learning Dojo, and let's go ahead and dive in here. And I'm going to show you some examples before we actually start to create our own. I want to create a custom interaction, and I'm going to try to describe it as much as possible inside of ChatGPT. I'm going to show you one that I've already built, and we're going to try to build a similar thing with new prompts and even describe it as much as possible. Let's go ahead and show you what I've built, and I've been recently working on the TechSmith Camtasia certification. So this is the official certification for Camtasia, and I wanted to be able to create some learning interactions that are a little bit different than what you find inside of Storyline. I have this first one right here, which is essentially a carousel that has different pages that you can navigate to. I have some animated GIFs that will take you step by step here and show you these different steps. But you can see down at the bottom, these are different pages. Now I could take this and I can swipe it. So it is a carousel where I can go from page to page. And if I select this menu up on top, this menu animates in, and you'll notice that the little menu icon changes to an X. So if I click on that, it will actually animate in. This will take me and jump me to specific pages inside of the carousel. This was all built using ChatGPT. However, I had to be familiar with the structure of what I wanted to use. And so it is using some specific frameworks. Frameworks are a way for you to get specific functionality without you having to build it yourself. In this framework that I'm using specifically is Swiper.js. Swiper.js allows you and has a lot of flexibility to be able to create these different types of carousels. And so I'm creating one that takes up the full page. But on top of that, I'm also using GreenSock or GSAP to be able to animate in the different pages as well. The animated GIFs that you're seeing, those were actually created using Camtasia. So it's a combination of all these different things. That is one example. And the layouts, I'm using Bootstrap. So let me go into getbootstrap.com. Now with Bootstrap, it gives you a lot of out-of-the-box different functionality. If you click on examples, you can see different examples. Or if you go to docs, this is really where you can go down to components. And they have different accordions, they have different alerts, they have different badges, all these different components that you can use. I have built pages and I've created courses in Pluralsight all about Bootstrap. So I am coming at this very familiar with Bootstrap. I did not even write any of this code out or anything like that. I did tweak a couple of things. So it is still, in my opinion, helpful for you to be aware of these different components and know what to ask for. The other interaction that I created, and I wanted to create something very similar to what you see in Camtasia for their different visual effects. So you can see right here, visual effects, we have the background remover, the border, the color adjustment, and so forth. And when you click on this, it shows what's called a modal. Some of them are animated or some of them are just images right here. I'm trying to remember which, okay, this one was animated. And so you can see this animated GIF right here. The GIF itself was, or GIF, I've heard it both ways, was created using Camtasia. But the different cards here were created using ChatGPT, but I based it off of Bootstrap. There is something called cards that kind of give me that effect. That's why it's helpful for you to be familiar with the different components that comes out of Bootstrap so you know what to ask for. And the cards have like an image and it has some text and it creates this card for me. And that's really what I started out with. Now I adjusted some things like the curved. I also adjusted like when I click on it, it will show the green outline and a little check mark in the middle. That was all done through ChatGPT. So let's go ahead and just, I don't know how much we'll work through for this specific example, but I wanted to show you what's possible and really how blown away I am about what ChatGPT can produce. So I'm going to create a project inside of ChatGPT. I'm going to tell it specifically what it's familiar with, and then I'm going to start giving it directions. I could do it one of two ways. I'm going to use the desktop version. So I could create my own project inside of Visual Studio Code, and then I could just copy in and paste the text. I'm going to actually do that first of all, is I'm going to create a folder, and this is going to be card interaction. We're going to use the Bootstrap cards and create something very similar. So card interaction here. Now I'm going to open this up inside of Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is free. And if you open this up, I'm going to create 3 different files. I'm going to create an index.html. This is my main file. And this is where I'm going to copy in my HTML code. Now I'm going to create 2 different folders. The first folder is going to be JS. That's going to be my JavaScript. And the second folder is going to be CSS. That is going to be my CSS file. Now inside of CSS, I'm going to create that file called main.css. That's my CSS file here. Inside of JavaScript, I'm going to create this main.js. Now you could tell ChatGPT to create these files. There is functionality where it'll allow you to download, but you can also take your folder and upload it to ChatGPT and say, start from this project file. And that's what I'm going to try first of all, is I'm going to save all these, and I'm just going to make sure all my folder is ready to go. And I'm going to compress this, or you can send it to a zip, and it works better when ChatGPT has a zip. And here is the desktop version, and I'm going to drag this in as a starting point. I've had some kind of good and bad happen when I start with a zip file, or I ask ChatGPT to give me a zip file. So hopefully it works. If not, I may just have to copy and paste in the code that it gives me. But let's give it some instructions. One of the key points in ChatGPT, if you haven't worked with it already, is to tell it specifically what it's familiar with and what it is. And then you can direct it, especially its prompting, and you can tell it what kind of things you want it to get out of. Now I've created a custom GPT with all that instructions, specifically Frank, the custom learning developer, and I've given it specific instructions of this is the type of code you're familiar with. These are the types of file structures I want. So I've created that kind of out of the box, and you could get that. You could find that one I have published, so you can find that on the GPT store. But for now, let's just start with 4.0, which is the current version that I'm working with right now, and let's give it some instructions. You are a learning developer. You work mostly with custom code. You are familiar with all HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I want to make sure that it knows the basics. You also create layouts using Bootstrap 5, so we can get those different components, and animate objects with the xAPI library. You could also say that you're familiar with xAPI, and you could even track this through xAPI as well. I'm not going to do this for this example, but I do want to create a video in the future that's how to use ChatGPT and xAPI. I'm also going to create a video on how to use ChatGPT with storyline code and how you could add on to that or figure different things out with storyline code. So make sure that you subscribe to my channel so you can get notified when I create those videos as well. So let's start with that right here. I'm just going to go ahead and give it that. It says, got it. I'm familiar with this, and let's go ahead and create it. I am going to start you out with a project file. I want to keep all my HTML in the index.html file. It helps when you specifically tell it where to put what code, and the CSS in the main. Let's do css/main.css. So I'm telling it what folder, and the inside of the folder is that slash, basically is how I'm saying that. And then in the main.css, place all the CSS. And then inside the js/main.js, and you can name those files whatever you want, place all the JavaScript. That way, when I copy and paste the code, it already knows what locations, even if the zip file doesn't work for me, it at least knows the locations of where I want different things to go. All right, let's go ahead and just drag this file over. And if you're working with the web version, you can still drag files over, or you can attach files as well. Again, I've kind of had hit or miss with this sometimes. Let's go ahead and just hit enter. And I had to hit refresh there, but let's hit enter now. It may produce, I've noticed that sometimes it starts to write out the code anyways. Let's hit retry. Now it's going to analyze my code. It's going to take that zip file, break it apart, analyze it. And there we go. It's letting me know that. Here's the relevant pathways. That's good. I'll just kind of leave it as that. What changes are you wanting? Now we can start telling it what to do. So we can say, we want to create a card interaction. When you click on the card, we want to have a modal. Again, if you're not familiar with Bootstrap, you can go into Bootstrap, and let's pull up Bootstrap right here. You can go into cards, but we want to have, when you click on the card, and you have to be very specific, not just a button right here, because the card is not clickable by default, but we want to say, when you click on the card, pull up a modal, and that modal is going to have different content based on the card that you choose. And it's going to have an image, be very descriptive. We can go in and customize the look and the feel of this later, but be very descriptive. And modals are like pop-ups, basically. This will allow us to have a modal. We can tell it, give a default modal, but also we want to have this be a dark theme. So we have to be very specific with what we're doing. So let's go back into ChatGPT, create a card interaction using Bootstrap cards. Inside the card, have an image on top of the card, and then a text, and then text with a title and short description in the card. When you click on the card, pop open a modal. Let's make sure we got the right modal with an A, so not model, but modal. Use this same modal for each card, but have a different image inside the modal and different text inside the modal that changes based on which modal was clicked or which card was clicked. Also have a close button that will close the modal and take you back to the interaction. So we're trying to describe as much as possible with as much detail as possible of how this experience is going to go. And we can tweak this. So even if we don't get it perfect, we can then go in and say, this isn't working, make this a little bit larger, and so forth. So you don't have to get it perfect exactly right. I had to go back and forth with those interactions several times. Let's now describe the look and the feel. The cards will have rounded corners. We're going to adjust the border radius, and the entire interaction and modal needs to be dark themed. Use the Google material theme when possible. That is like a set style. Google has a material theme of like, this is how using this theme, this is how components should use, and so forth. And that's what I'm kind of taking advantage of. Have 9 cards to start with 4 cards per row. Also make it responsive so it works well on mobile devices. Again, I don't have to have it perfect. We can start tweaking it here in a second, but let's see what it gives me for now. All right, so in this case, it has me download the project files. It's telling me what has been added. Added a Bootstrap grid layout with 9 cards. Each card has an image, title, short description. Included a modal that dynamically updates based on the card clicked. And then applied a dark theme, Google material theme, and so forth. Great. It sounds like things may be working, and so maybe I can get rid of this other project file that I have here. But let's see, because again, I've had some good luck and some not. I'm going to save this on my desktop and click save. Now, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's throwing an error here. Let's try to just download it as maybe a different name. Hit 2. Yeah. So it did not let me download the project. And again, the desktop version is kind of new, so maybe that is the case. Can you tell me the code? Let's hit retry. There we go. So it's going to give me the code, but now I just need to copy and paste it into the locations. That's where, like I've said, sometimes it allows me to download the code and I can just open it up. Sometimes it doesn't, so it just kind of depends. Hopefully with the desktop version, it gets a little bit better. I could try this on the web version and see if it works, but let's go ahead and see what happens here. I've also noticed sometimes it does take a little bit to kind of dynamically generate the code here, but it's pretty much doing a good job here so far. So let's hit copy on the index.html. I'm going to go into my Visual Studio Code and I'm going to go into the index.html and hit paste. Now let's go back into here and wait for this to finish generating the code before you copy and paste it. So I'll copy these main.css and paste that there. And then I'll come in here and copy this, and then I'll paste this here. Now hit save on all files. And then I just want to make sure that it's referencing my files fine. Yes, it is. It's referencing the Bootstrap. It's referencing the Bootstrap CSS and then my main.css. So everything should work. It's not going to know what to do with the images yet. It just kind of puts a placeholder image right here. So that's why it's still good for you to be familiar with some code and what to do with the code here. So let's go ahead and preview this. And you can preview it by either double clicking on the index.html, or I have this feature in Visual Studio Code that will allow me to just preview it right there. And you can see, great, this has an image 150 by 150. It has the card 1, card 2, and I can click on it and there is my modal. So it's getting me to a point which is very similar to what we saw with this right here, but I can go ahead and start to adjust a couple different things. Let's add a couple other things. So I'm going to come into ChatGPT, remove the border around the card, and add a drop shadow. So the card stands out and only give me the code files that change. Sometimes it like reproduces all of the index.html and JavaScript even though it hasn't changed. So I don't want to have all of it. Let's see what happens here. You can then start to tweak and say, remove this code, change the border radius. And so it's still good to become familiar with like CSS and know that, you know, in order to adjust the corner, it's a border radius is what they call it. I don't know why it's failing sometimes. Sometimes I just have to hit refresh, but let's do this. It's given me no changes in the index.html, no changes in main.js. Let's go ahead and copy this over and come over to our main.css file. You can see a little bit more code has been added, and then I can go ahead and hit refresh, and there we go. That's a little bit dark here. It does have the drop shadow, but I'm liking it. Let's go ahead and change the background. Let's go back into ChatGPT. Make the card, make inside the card slightly lighter than the body color. The body is the reference to like everything else around it. And then just so it stands out a little bit more, there is our new code. I'm gonna hit copy, paste that there, and then come in here, hit refresh. And it didn't quite do it. We could even say specifically lighter, or in Visual Studio Code, you can see the card right here. This background color, you can just hover over this and kind of tweak it there. And sometimes I've done that where I update it, and then I come back in here, hit refresh. Still not updating there. If you don't know exactly where the code is, you could right click on it, go into inspect window. And then by selecting this, I can go up and select the card here. And then you can see the BG dark. It's actually a different style than what we're getting here. It's not in here. I think that's a Bootstrap thing. So what we could do is copy this and we could come in here and just add on a different class. And then we can say, we could even copy like the background color and we could change that to be something like, I'm gonna find a color here real quick. And now let's come back in here. And then sometimes I have to say important in order to override that. And it kind of overrid everything. So I probably want to figure that out a little bit more. But let's just get rid of that for now. And let's tell ChatGPT to make the background a little bit lighter instead. So let's actually go a different route. Make the body background a little lighter than the card background color. Now what the image is, while that's generating here, what the image is, I will need to place in the images and point to the images that I create. So I'd probably want to create a folder called images, and then I would just go ahead and type in images / and then whatever specific image that I'm talking to. So keep that in mind. There's my main.css. Let's see if this is actually changed now. Now let's go back in and preview it. I see what's happening. Because of this background here, color, this is a Bootstrap thing. This BG dark was the same as the background, so it's kind of overwriting it. So if I come into here and just get rid of that class right there and hit save, there was a little bit more of a contrast there. So that's the reason why that was still kind of blending in. You may have to do some investigating here. Now, when you want to copy the code, you made some code changes locally. You could come into the code and you can say copy, and let's get rid of both of these BG dark here. And then I'm going to hit save. And then what I'm going to do is just select all of that, come into ChatGPT, update the index.html with this code. And I find it easier if you hit a quote before and then a quote after, just so it knows what the separation is. And then it's going to update the code. It has your changes inside of there. So it's really just a matter of back and forth saying, okay, let's see what it gives us. Now let's go ahead and change the code and so forth. So it does help to still be familiar with some web code in that case, but you don't need to be an expert in it. And you could have ChatGPT directly generate a lot of this code, and then you just need to know where to tweak it and adjust it. And you can say, okay, instead of 2 cards, create another card, or create another page if you're using Swiper, and have this page have some content and have it have an accordion, other things like that. So hopefully this at least shows you the possibility of what you can do with ChatGPT and code to be able to create a custom learning interaction. If you like this video, head on over to my YouTube channel, click that like button and subscribe to my channel, as well as hit the bell notification so you get notified of all future videos as they come out. That really helps my channel, allows me to continue to grow, and really my goal for this channel is to help you become the best learning developer that you can, so you can push the limits of custom learning interactions and take advantage of some of these new tools in order to create these learning interactions. If you have any other questions, feel free to just comment down below my videos and say, hey, Jeff, what about this? Or this isn't exactly working. Or if you have any other suggestions saying, I'm really trying to do this, I'm happy to help there as well. That's all I have for today. So thanks everyone, and I'll see you next time.